Hello everyone and welcome to a little bit of a different type of video today. Today I will be going through my approach or my perspective of training or running training. And this is because I've seen throughout my years that my perspective on running has changed. It shifted from seeing it as a fitness builder to more like archery. And that is why I've chosen the title Drawing the Bow. And yeah, this is the archer's approach to running. And I hope this can be beneficial to you, maybe spark some ideas or change the way you think about running. But yeah, let's get into it. I'll be going through a little bit who I am, present myself, because I've not done that on my channel yet. So I hope that helps. But then I want to go into how people train more generally. Not going to be going into specifics, but also motivate why my approach is beneficial or where this perspective fits. But yeah, and then I'm going to be going through the perspective, the metaphor of archery compared to running. And yeah, let's start. Well, who am I? Well, my name is Damien. I'm a runner, um, but I also have a little bit of education to the sport or to sports, where I did 3 years of bachelor degree studies at Malmö, and then I'm also a personal trainer. But in terms of running and that atmosphere, I'm mostly self-taught. I've done my own research and self-study and even trial and error, where I've tried different types of concepts and philosophies during my own training and try to evaluate what works, what doesn't work, and stuff like that. But one of my papers during the bachelor's degree was actually comparing three types of training and seeing what is most effective in terms of marathon performance, which was very interesting. But my sports background, yeah, I can present a little bit more about that. I played football or soccer for the Americans for about 9 years. It was a fun time, but I didn't enjoy the sport anymore, so I quit, and that led me to running. And I've been running for about 5 years. The last two, a little bit more serious, where I've been able to log 100-kilometer weeks, 60 miles roughly. And my recent personal bests are the half marathon, which I did in Copenhagen, 1:17, and then we have marathon PB and then 100 kilometer. The 100 kilometer I just did as a, it's not an official race. It's just something I did, yeah, outside of any race. Just I wanted to challenge myself. But yeah, today I want to talk a little bit more how people train and why it matters how you train. And generally, I like to divide this into two parts, where the first one is the structured way to train. And when you train following a program and you follow a structured approach, I like to think that it often answers the questions why, what, when, and how. Not all of them, but more often than not, it answers most and multiple. And this type of training usually is driven by a purpose to become a better self, to chase a personal best maybe, but also more generally seek health. Or and there are different types of health, which I will be uh, going through a little bit. And next one we have the adaptability, meaning that just because it's structured, it doesn't mean that you can't change it. It's something that can keep changing and something that you can do yourself, but also with the help of a coach, for example. And who follows this structured approach? Well, it's all the way from beginners to professionals. So really anyone can use this approach, and it usually builds consistency, meaning you follow a program, you know what to do, and in the long term, you build a base, and you can train independently as well. But then you have, on the other hand, the unstructured approach with which usually, or more often than not, only answers the questions why, and not really what, when, or how. It's a little bit more freedom in this approach, where it's also a little bit more impulse driven, meaning that it depends on the day form, meaning that today maybe you feel good, you have a lot of energy, the day suits you right to go for a run. So you go for a run just then, but it's not something you have to do. And this type of training is often directionless, meaning that you don't really have an end goal, and you can see the progress or the benefits or the yeah, basically the improvement plateaus, meaning that after some time your progress starts to plateau. And who does this approach? Well, it usually is beginners to amateurs, not really professionals, because as I mentioned, the progress plateaus. And this type of way of training usually is people who just like to run because they feel the joy of movement, and who want the health benefits in terms of it helps their mental, or it helps their it helps them connect to others, meaning they run with friends or in a run club and stuff like that. So, meaning structured training, it turns beginners and makes them progress. The unstructured, usually, when a beginner starts it and they do it, usually leads to a plateau. And that's the way I like to put it. And you can't really release the arrow as an archer if you never took the time to trust or took the time to aim. And I have a picture of a house in the bottom right, and people like to compare running with building a house, where every training session is a brick, and if you combine multiple bricks, meaning training sessions, you can eventually build a foundation, and then you build the walls and etc. But I feel that that type of view is a little bit misleading, and doesn't really take account everything, which is why I have chosen the archery example. And I have a quote here which I came up with after some thinking, and the arrow doesn't reach its targets through strength alone, but through the alignment of the bow, the arrow, and the target. And what do I mean by that? Well, as an archer, you can't really shoot an arrow without the bow. And in terms of running, it's the how. And as an archer, you have to have somewhere to hit. You have to have the target. And that is the why in terms of running. And then you have to have the arrows, which is going to hit the target. And that is the what. So if you put this all together, you have the ability to aim, trust your arrow, draw the bow, and then release, and maybe hit the target or not. Might be a little bit more abstract right now, but I will try to explain it to the best of my ability. So, why do I run? Well, as an archer, every archer, they have a target. They have to know where to hit, and they have to know the distance between yourself, and the target. Because without a target, every arrow flies aimlessly. And that ties a little bit into the structured versus unstructured approach, where the unstructured approach is a little bit more impulse driven and doesn't really follow a purpose or have an end goal. But there are different types of whys, meaning there are different reasons why people run. And some people, they run to chase personal bests. I would put myself into this category on some days, most days, where I try to run a PB. And when you have that type of mindset, I like to think that you have to specify. you have to think, what distance do I want to run in and what time? And this is a pretty common thing, I would say, but not a lot of people try to write it down or stuff like that. But if you take running more seriously, they usually know their time goals and stuff like that. And then you have the little bit more abstract way of running, and that is running for the health benefits. They run because they like to run with friends or with the partner, the social aspect of running. Maybe they don't see a lot of people on the outside, and running makes them go outside and meet new people and other people, socialize, and that feeds to the social health. And physical, the physical health might be obvious for some. For some, it's unheard of. Running improves the cardiovascular health. There is a lot of study behind this, and yeah, you feel better when you run, and your body benefits from running in good amounts. And also the mental aspect. People who has a lot to think about might find running a little bit of therapy where they can process things and yeah, get the health benefits from running. And then there's people who like the growth from running, whether that is personal, meaning that they want to fight a battle from within. They want to grow personally. They want to challenge themselves. Uh, what can they do? Like, what is my limit? Then I have the mental part again. People wants to try and see their mental resilience or try to improve their mental resilience, because running translates to so many other things other than just running. But you have to think about where your target is and how far away from uh, your starting position the target is. Meaning, if you draw the bow, but the target is so much further away than you're starting, you might not even be able to hit, even if you have the strongest of bows and the best arrows, if the target is too far away. But with enough training, your technique will improve and you will be able to shoot further and with higher precision. Meaning that if you have a goal that is within your reach, within the equipment you have, or relative to your equipment, you will be able to reach it. And I like to think that you shouldn't set targets which are too far away, and in the same time, you shouldn't place targets which are too close. You want to have like a middle ground. And with that, I mean, you have to look at your own ability. Where do I stand right now? And that is the archer's position to the left right now. Where am I right now? And that can be the physiological aspects of running, like what is my lactate threshold? What is my VO2 max? What is my aerobic base? And what are my current running personal bests? And then you have to set yourself goals. If you have the personal best as a goal or as a reason to why you run, then it's easy. Then you have, for example, a sub 4 hour marathon. But then you have to ask yourself, is that the main goal? And if I don't reach that, what is the secondary target? Because every target has a bullseye and then they have goals around it. And then I like to think about it as A goal, B goal, and C goal, and so on, where A goal is the priority. But I also like to think that you shouldn't have only one target. You should have the short-term targets and long-term goals. And I want to point out that usually, from my experience, people overestimate their short-term goals or their short-term progress and underestimate what they can do long-term. So I would like to say that don't rely too much on what you can and can't do on the short term, but focus on the bigger picture and the longevity. Because the difference between you, the target, and the future, it all matters. Your short-term goals play a factor into the long-term goals, and where you stand right now also has a meaning or plays a part in how well you will shoot the arrow. But the next one, the how. How will I reach my target? Well, I like to think of it as the bow, and that is like the structure uh, that stores and releases the energy. And how you draw it, how you draw the bow, determines how straight and how far your arrow will fly. And here I like to think about it as philosophy and opportunity, meaning that ask yourself, what training philosophy do you have? Do you believe in the double threshold, which has taken a lot of new people or to another level? Or are you like someone who prefers polarized training? And you have to ask yourself, what is my training philosophy? What do I believe in? Do I follow a training program or a training coach which says or believes in a training system or a way of running? Or do I just wing it? And here I like to point out that there's a difference between training philosophy and training principles, because training principles might be something like you like to run high mileage, and usually if you run high mileage, you have double training days. Many people who follow the same training, which for example many people follow the double threshold training right now, but they have different training principles. They take it into different perspectives. Some people like to do 400-meter repeats with short rest and lots of repetitions. Others ignore 400 meters totally and just focus on the continuous threshold and a little bit longer reps, often not below 800 meters. But also the mindset and opportunity you give yourself to run. Do you give yourself the opportunity to run? Meaning that if you have a job, do you wake up early to get that early run in? Or after a hard day, do you just take a day off if you feel bad or something like that? And I want to think that how you see your training and your running, it matters. Because if you're someone who takes training very seriously, more often than not, you are gonna be someone who sacrifices for the training. Meaning you do a lot of things outside of running which will benefit your training, such as avoiding alcohol to improve your recovery, or drinking lots of water instead of soda. Um, of course, there is benefits to drinking soda as well, but um, what you do outside of running, it matters, and all of this, it shapes the bow. And I want to say that there is a difference in bows. For example, there is the compound bow, which is usually metal, and they have a lot of more technology compared to a wooden bow made of a stick found in the nature. And I like to think of it as what separates the elite from the hobby jogger. Well, the elite often have better technique, they take the running more serious, and they have a different training philosophy and mindset. And that leads to them having a stronger bow which can launch the arrow even further. Compared to someone who maybe doesn't take the running so serious, doesn't do a lot of things to benefit their running or training, and that might be a wooden bow. And of course, there's a large window in between this, which, yeah, you can compare to different types of bows. And then you have the arrows, which are the what. Every training session and every arrow you shoot, it carries the so-called imprint of how far or how you have prepared. And this is done by defining what you're doing. What type of training are you doing? Try to be as specific as possible. Think about the structured approach. On every day, what is the goal of every session? And this can be easy runs, threshold, VO2 max, hill sessions, and also the prehab and strength sessions. And all of this should have a fit into the training structure and how you train. But it's also important to understand that there's different types of arrows that you shoot. There's arrows that you shoot during training. There's arrows that you shoot on race day, and there are arrows that you shoot for example recovery days, just to have fun. Maybe a far-fetched metaphor, but I hope you can understand it. But it's also important to understand why you shoot every arrow. Like, what is every session giving me? Is it to progress, or is it a way to regress? And in this term, I mean, do I take too much on every session? Like, do I go too hard on this threshold session where I actually regress instead of progress? And then there is digress, which I like to think of it as when you have a structured approach, for example, and you do one extra run that's not maybe in the training program, which might be if your friend asks you to run, but you should have a recovery instead, or if you go too fast on a recovery day, which means that you've lost focus on the target. And that is what I mean by digress, which or digress. I don't know how to really pronounce it. English not my first language, but this is what I mean with the arrow. And everything you do, every training session, and everything you do outside of running, it either sharpens or blunts your arrowhead. And everything you do, it forms your arrow. And I like to think of it as if you follow every training session with high discipline and training and intensity discipline, meaning that you know the purpose, you know the effect it will give you, the adaptation, so you follow it strictly and you stick to the plan. That will sharpen your arrowhead, which will make it easier for it to land on the target. But if you are someone who maybe doesn't do all the reps, takes maybe a little less or even too much rest between repetitions, that will blunt your arrowhead and make the arrow fly worse and maybe not even able to land on the target. And that is what I mean by the arrow, the archer's approach. And how does it all come together then? Well, you have to know your targets as a runner or someone. Figure out why you run and try to specify it as much as possible. That can be a specific time. It can be what health reason you decide to run, or what you want to improve, stuff like that. Why do you run? And try to be so specific. And I like to write it write it on a piece of paper or something, but not everyone has to do that. And then you move on to choosing your bow or building your bow. And that is done by figuring out your attitude, your mindset, and the tools you give yourself to reach the goal. Do you make time to go for runs? Do you approach every training session with a good mindset? And how serious do you take it to reach the goal? And that forms the bow. And then you have to use the arrows, craft your arrows, and as I said before, every session it has an effect on your goal, and everything even you do outside, the food you take in, the supplements and stuff like that, it forms your arrows. And building multiple arrows, I like to think of it as you train your aim. Every session you do, you train your aim. So, for example, on race day, you will have the better aim, which you can hit your target with. And this is not a linear process. This is something that goes in cycles. You can reevaluate your goals. You can configure the bow even during training and stuff like that. And you can always change things. But this approach is how I view training, and this is basically how I like to see it. And there's something I want to point out as a closing remark, and that is releasing the arrow with trust. And that is, for some, it's on race day. That means you have to trust the process. It's not about what you can do on one day, but it's relying on what you've done before and trusting in yourself and the process. Trust in the bow, trust in the arrow, and trust that you know your target. And for others, it's not about race day. It's about showing up. It's about, going out the front door, tying the shoelaces, and just going outside and feeling good about running. And that is a great way to see running. And yeah, even then, you should rely on the bow. You've done so much work and practice leading up to releasing the arrow and aiming. So you should be able to hit the target if you got the right bow and you got the right arrows. And that is basically what I wanted to say. This is something I came up with while I run. I think a lot when I run, and I've done a little bit of coaching outside in terms of running, and yeah, this is something I like to think about and how I view running. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any questions, I will maybe answer, maybe not. I don't know how active I am on this YouTube. I don't have any notification on, but I will do my best to answer everything. And I would like to hear your thoughts about it. And yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you guys take care and hope this was beneficial in some way or another to you. So take care. See y'all in the next one. Bye bye.